Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to a quick review of The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. This is our book of the month for the month of June, recommended by Jarl Trippin. Let's get straight to the point. The title of this video. I fear this book. I fear it. I finished it. How can you fear something you've already conquered? When I announced this book as the book of the month, Jarl Trippin, Sam, some other lovely people said, "Oh, you're going to love it." More complicated than Malazan, some would say. Akin to Malazan. Malazan's my favorite fantasy series, by the way. A really spectacular ride, which made me incredibly excited. I got this book from the library not knowing what to expect, not knowing what it's about, only knowing that it was recommended. So I dove straight into it, and reading this book was a unique experience. Do I think it's the perfect book? Is it my new favorite book? No. But it took me on a religious experience. And let's just say I'm frightened in the way that Alice in Wonderland may have been frightened when the rabbit was standing on the edge of the pit going, because what waits in that abyss? Who knows? This book is very, I would describe it as atmospheric, for those of you that haven't read it, as perhaps most of you have not. It's a fantasy book. It follows Severian in this guild of the torturers, and then his journey that he goes on. Short book, 300 pages. Real walk in the park compared to something like Malazan. Am I right? Not like that in the slightest. All in all, a relatively short read for a fantasy book. What's unique about it is it has this tone of a filter of gloom, perhaps I would describe it as. I wouldn't say these characters, it's not like grim dark fantasy. Everyone in this book is not evil, although some characters have some edge to them. Overall, it feels like normal people, not particularly epic or fantastical or evil, dastardly. But this world has this filter of, this is a dark world, right? This is a world where there's a guild of torturers, right? So it kind of has this gothic feel to the world. At least it did to me when I read it. And you're kind of living in this gloom a little bit, exploring Severian and his day-to-day. So it's very in the first portion of the book, very slice of life fantasy, which I do enjoy, as he's going through his day-to-day in this guild. And then, as the plot progresses, and he begins to go on this journey, it shifts a little bit. One thing I do really enjoy about this book is this narration tactic. There's a better way, the framing device of this book. So it's framed as the first person, our main character, is recounting this period of his life from the future. So sometimes he will interject in his own storytelling and saying, and like reflecting even further in the future, like he'll be telling us a story and saying, well, then I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of me in the future, or just talk about like the concept of narration and the concept of remembering a time from the past, or just pontificating on some deep philosophical subject, which in my opinion are some of my favorite parts of the book. One thing this book does very well, even though sometimes the plot events seem very simplistic if you put them on paper, it's this pontificating that I really enjoyed. Him exploring the idea of love right after describing a scene where he like falls in love. So he'll like describe the scene, and then I saw her and we fell in love, and then he'll say, but no, let me just expound upon that subject. Love, what is love? That's what it's kind of like. And it's very interesting. I think Severian is a very intriguing protagonist. And maybe I got something for flawed young men protagonists, right? But he reminds me of Fitz in a little bit in terms of the attachment that I have to him. I think they're very different characters, but in terms of the attachment, in terms of not entirely knowing what they're doing, and kind of growing into themselves. I think they're very similar in that sense. And I really enjoyed following them. And those books as well, the Farseer trilogy, had that kind of same framing where it's Fitz from the future describing himself from the past. So it kind of rang some bells there for me as well. In terms of you guys saying, oh, it's similar to Malazan in terms of complexity of the world, that's where it gets in the area of I'm frightened for my life. I'm jumping into the abyss, into the rabbit hole, right? Alice in Wonderland style. Because first portion of the book, it was pretty straightforward. No problems following it. There's this world, there's these characters, there's this outlaw, there's this weird event. There's like weird, why is he in the graveyard? What's going on in the graveyard? What are they doing? Like, there's the mystery of like what's happening with the plot. Who are these characters? But it was very easy to follow. It wasn't like Malazan where you're thrown into a 1,000-year conflict trying to figure out whose allegiances are with whose and for why. It's not like that. It's not in terms of scale. It's very, very narrow compared to Malazan in terms of scale. We're with Severian. He's in his guild. Things are happening. Very pinhole. We're in his perspective. Then as the book progresses, it gets confusing in terms of what is happening to him in the world around him. Specifically when he gets to like the garden portion of this book, he enters like these magical gardens, and that's where really like this mystical, fantastical elements start to happen. Like he's being teleported places. He's being attacked by creatures that are like strange. And that's where it really feels like, how fantastical is this world? What are the rules here? I kind of lost my sense, my grip of that. And it was just very, very fast paced of this weird thing happened, this weird thing happened, this weird thing happened. And it changes the tone from this gloominess to this kind of fast paced, chaotic shifting while keeping that kind of slow, philosophical tone, if that makes sense. So it kind of just left me, you know what I mean? It left me out there like I was bonked in the head. That's what it felt like. I felt like I had a concussion during that whole section. But the end of the book, and I'm going to be honest with you, during this portion, it was kind of losing me a little bit. Because I don't have a problem with confusion, but it does make it harder to immerse yourself in. Like there is more like, what's going on? I got to think about it. And even with my favorite series, Malazan, or Encountering a Very Hard Book in general, you can still really like it, but it ebbs and flows. It makes it more difficult to love if you're confused for an extended period of time. So I thought that the book was going to end in this place, and I was going to be like, wish you would have stayed in the first half of the book. That being said, the way the end of this book wraps up, how it kind of ties everything from earlier together, like specifically the tying together of like the duel and the challenge. I'm like, where'd this come from? This is out of nowhere. Why is the plot taking this direction? The way that all wraps up in the end of the book was fantastic. And his thoughts about the events that just happened to him in this book, I loved it. I thought it was great. So I really enjoyed this book as a whole, and thinking about, and this goes back again to the title of the video, right? Why am I scared? Because I was a little bit confused in the middle portion. Is that what you're saying? Well, what I'm saying is this is the type of book. There's multiple types of, I feel like, confusion. I kind of hinted at this earlier. So Malazan's confusion in the sense that like I don't know enough of this world to be understanding exactly the power of what's happening right now. That's where Malazan is. It's like you got to catch up on thousands of years of history before you can appreciate what's happening on the page. This is more in the sense that you're confused, but you can sense that the thing you're confused about is like the meaning of life. And he's trying to give it to us, the author that is, in subliminal messaging. And I just haven't cracked the code yet. And I know this is a 4-book series. So it'll probably like expand upon what happens in this book, especially the more confusing parts, and kind of explain like, what is this garden? Who created this garden? What are the rules of this universe, right? So right now it just gives me the sense that like, if I wanted to dive deeper into like what happened in those gardens, the parts I was confused about what is going on with this world, I could get lost in it, which is something that, you know, is a great thing, to get caught in the weeds of a new universe, but it's the abyss, guys. who knows how far I will fall. And isn't that amazing? So overall, it's a very, very unique book. And I'm gonna make another comparison to another book. We've been talking about Malazan a lot. It reminds me of, and this is a very, very different book than this. I'm not saying they're the same at all. The Stand by Stephen King. Specifically the ending. The ending of that book, controversial, but I enjoyed it, kind of leaves you wondering why did it happen that way specifically? And the answer to that question, the why, is a very deep philosophical answer. Very religious undertones in some interpretations of that, in most interpretations of that ending. And I get the sense, and maybe I'm clinically insane, it just gave me the same feeling in my heart that this is going to be some fable, right? That's what it felt like. Even though Severian's a very grounded character, I feel like it gives the air of this is a legend. And he's telling us this story and it feels very personal. He's recounting his past. But I feel like this is gonna it's the answer to all of my confusion is something profound. Even though I don't know what that profoundness would be, he's just teleporting into different worlds and there's naked people telling stories to each other in a hut. I'm what? How did we get here? And he's pulling girls out of the swamp. I have no idea where it's going, but it just gives me that feeling of I'm confused because I'm not smart enough to understand the secrets of the universe. And that's a special kind of great writing. I don't know if I would consider this a great book yet. I need to have the full picture. But one thing I've said a lot of times in the past is the difference between a good book and a great book. It's just something innate, right? Some authors have it, some authors don't. A great author, you don't question their work, right? There's no oh, I would have done that differently. It's, how come I don't understand why I don't grasp it, right? You don't question their work. It's your fault if you don't understand it. And I just get the instinct that I'm just not understanding something that's fantastic going in front of my eyes. Specifically for that portion, the rest of it, like I said, the tone, the gloom, the narration, the philosophy, absolutely fantastic. But the mysteries of that specific middle portion almost drives me forward more than I really like the characters. Because it kind of has this fable-esque view, right? And I have no idea where it's going, right? So if you would have told me the book ends there, it still would have had that depth and mystery to it. But perhaps it would just be impossible to crack. So why do I fear? I fear because I've gone too far. And who knows who I'll be when I walk outside the other end. But that being said, great book. Fantastic book. Really did enjoy it. We'll be continuing the series, absolutely. We'll see how it pans out, but the books I compared it to today, Malazan, favorite fantasy series, The Stand, is my favorite book of all time. So the fact that it invokes those feelings in a lot of ways and favorite character of all time fits, compared it there. So we'll see how the series shakes up, but it could be a contender, guys. And who knows? Who really knows how this will end up? It just feels like I've encountered something special. And for that, you're all tripping. You're a certified reader, my friend. I appreciate the recommendation. Books of the month have yet to let me down. And you know what? For that, I greatly appreciate it. Don't forget that if you want your book to be the book of the month, comment. You know what? I'm probably going to make a separate community post about this because I can be honest with you, lost the list of books. I have my one for maybe July, and then I've lost all the lists. So if you want to comment the book you'd like me to read, your reputation staking book, comment that below. I'll probably make a community post or something to get another list because I've lost most of them. Sorry. Why don't you go back to your old videos and look at the comments? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Do you know how many videos I have, guys? I have 200 plus videos. I post way too much. But be sure to like and subscribe if you liked this video and you want to see more in the future. Are you going to dive into this world of magic and mischief with me? Perhaps you should. Consider it reviewed. Thanks for sticking around.